what are your kind of thoughts on Kendi and Diangelo's work related to anti-racism?
I feel like, they definitely had a moment last year with everything that happened in the summer. And I think, if I were to put on my generosity hat, I think both Kendi and Diangelo are genuinely coming from a place of genuineness and feel sincere in what they have offered as solutions to combating racism. I happen to
Mm.
disagree with those solutions and think that those solutions will actually create more racism. But their intentions are well-meaning, but their understanding, I think, of the human condition is non-existent on some level, to be frank. When it comes to Kendi, he has specifically said that the heartbeat of racism is denial, which I don't actually know what that means. And if it means that the heartbeat of racism is uh, the denial of racism, then what has occurred is sort of the elevation of racism to this sort of omnipotent, amorphous force that is constantly here with us and will constantly be here with us. And the problem I have with that argument is that if you think about it to its logical conclusion, the person who believes that white supremacy is omnipotent and the most, let's say, primary force that affects external outcomes, and I'll talk about external outcomes in a few minutes, then one must actually believe in white supremacy
Mm.
to make that argument. One must actually believe that somehow people with a certain skin color are omnipotent and have this incredible power to dictate completely and inexorably the inner lives of all human beings on planet Earth, which is just silly, and quite. It's actually quite Gnostic and religious argument, but it's just you would have to. There are a number of things you would also have to believe about African American culture if you were to believe that. You would have to believe that our culture is not a critical part of the United States culture. Our culture has not, which it is. You would have to believe that our culture is not a intrinsic aspect of what it means to be American, which it is, and a whole host of other things you would have to believe. So I think that alone would, for me, discredits even Kendi's sort of scholarship. And also the other thing that he believes is that proof of racism is an absence in equality of outcome. Now, there's a whole host of reasons that I could get into why
Yes.
equality of outcome is a bad idea, but the most important one for the purposes of this conversation is that the equality of outcome actually is at odds with the concept of diversity. One community who is a church going, neighborhoody community, and by neighborhoody I mean all the people in the neighborhood know each other. They may all go to the same churches or to the same bars or to the same communal spaces. Their definition of happiness may be defined as the extent to which they're in relationship with each other. Whereas if you go to another area or another community or another culture, let's say in the Northeast in America, that culture may be defined by entrepreneurship, by the pursuit of wealth, by the pursuit of networking, right? And they will
Yes.
define happiness according to that. So by definition, those two perspectives will lead to different outcomes, right, in the people's lives. And so this idea of equality of outcome is in some sense conceded because it fails to take into account the fact that different cultures and different communities have different ideas for what a good outcome is. Now, this is a uniquely American problem, ironically. This is the thing that we do where we want to make everything in our image, whether it's globally. I no disrespect to Coca-Cola, but I'm thinking of the Coca-Cola brand when I think of this, but also internally when we have these conversations about race and we define racism as an absence of equality of outcome, when it seems to me that there will always be different outcomes simply by nature of the fact that there are diverse communities in America that have different ideas for what a good outcome is in the first place. So I said a lot about Kendi. I could go into Diangelo, but I'll stop here if you want to.
I love talking about this stuff, and I thought that was a very eloquent answer. I think like my kind of issue with all this is that it seems to be like, if everything is racist, then kind of nothing is racist.
Right.
Like how can you suss out the real racists if everyone is a racist?
Sure. Yeah. Again, it's this omnipotent flavor that is intrinsic to how Kendi sees the world that is problematic. It's also very human that he sees the world in that way, right? It's very human to cling to, because it gives one a sense of certainty on some level.
Sure.
So it's very human how he sees the world and how he goes about assessing the problem. But, I think it's wrong.